assessments are a bit, well, he said they were sort of not sort of what you sort of wanted them to be or something. So the first assessment for this was, the website says it was due tomorrow.
Yes, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
How are you doing with it?
Oh yeah, I've basically I'm just going to get the executive summary typed up and it's
Good. I've given, Ian's going to have the weekend to do it, so if you want to get it into me Wednesday, by Tuesday, Wednesday next week.
Oh,
yeah.
No, it was due, well I know it was due tomorrow, but at least that gives me a bit
Ian's a wee bit behind on it, so yeah, you can take the weekend and get it into me after the weekend, that'll be fine.
The reason why I did quite a bit, had to do quite a bit of it this week because last week I was busy trying to get the assignment for the marketing operations assessment that was due in the end of last week, which I got out.
Yeah. I think they've tried to stagger them a little bit, but there's always going to be some overlap, which makes it a bit difficult. Yeah. But yeah, if we can get them in by then, I'll be back on Wednesday next week. So.
I'll have them. I mean, at least that means I've got the weekend to
exactly.
go
to
over
proof it and have a look and double check it.
I just think there's a couple of things that I made because there's a couple of things I've got in the recommendations for action section which I made, which I'll probably need to move just to the gap analysis section. So I think that's where I've sort of got this over because the gap analysis, that's saying where are we now? Yeah. Where do we want to be? Yeah. What's the
difference? Yeah, exactly. And how do we close that gap? Yeah. Is that next stage? I don't seem to have one of those from you. I don't know, and I don't have one of these from you. This one is signing the code of conduct, which means you agree to abide by a student handbook and an academic statute. There's a copy of the handbook and there is a link to the academic statute online, so you can read that if you want. It's just all the academic policies and procedures. So if you ever have an issue with your marks or Ian or me, how do we deal with that? If you can't resolve it with Ian or I, then there's an HOD, there's an academic board, there's all sorts of other mechanisms. This says you're not going to drink in class, you can't just come to class drunk.
Just one other question about the assessment. Was this performance management and appraisal, was that part of the assessment?
I don't think so, no. I think that assessment is primarily...
Because I had actually included just a wee bit about performance appraisal in the assessment because there was that one bit about a few people coasting along and based on the minimum work. Yeah. So include a little bit of that.
Sure, no problem. So I think, I've just been looking at the content for this course because this has come from somewhere else, not from us, right? Yeah. And this course goes kind of from HR. It's called Managing Human Resources rather than Human Resource Management. And it goes from, we go from performance appraisal this week, or for the next few weeks, and managing, the nice side of work, so employee well-being and things, into leadership. It goes into a whole lot of leadership stuff. But it actually skips a whole lot of HR stuff. Like it doesn't cover what we've just done tonight, recruitment and selection, or induction, or training and development. So there's a whole lot of things it doesn't actually cover, which are HR fundamental stuff. But because it's assumed that you sort of have done the level 5 HR paper, they haven't put it in the level 6 HR paper. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what I'm offering, if you want to, is that you can come along to the session beforehand at 5:30 and just sit in and not do the assessments or anything, but just sit in and listen to the content if you're interested in the content.
At 5:30?
Yeah, 5:30 will start. It's just Ariana, she's my only other student. So you're welcome to do that or not do that as the case may be. Or you can log into the Moodle site and have a look at what I've got on the Moodle. It's Management 101 is what it's called, and it's the other HR paper. Because that, if you want to know more about recruitment and selection, for example, then come along and, well, actually we did, go on to Moodle and read that stuff. So I'm just thinking that this HR paper kind of misses out a whole lot of the crux of what HR actually is, and it's a bit disappointing.
Well, I don't really see any reason to not come along.
Exactly, that's right. Come in and sit in and listen to it, and you know, pipe up and get what you can out of it, and then you don't have to do the assessments or anything, but just if you're interested, the offer is there. Okay. I think next week for that paper, for example, we will be doing so we've done job analysis, job descriptions, we've done recruitment and selection. So I think next week we'll do induction and training and development, which I don't think we'll really cover in this particular paper. So you must come and listen. Anyway, we'll have a look at this week is starting to discuss performance management, appraising and improving performance. Yeah, so we're going to just talk about what is performance management, what does it involve, why is it useful, and what different methods and tools can we actually use for that process. So I guess first and foremost, what comes to mind when you think of performance management?
First thing that comes to mind is just something how with. I'll try and do it without looking at what's something.
Cool.
It's just, well, monitoring sort of how employees are performing and sort of helping them sort of perform. They're giving them ways to perform better and
Good.
make sure they're following along good.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is achieve the organisation's goals and objectives. So it does come from the top down. We have to know as an organisation what our mission is, what our values are, what our goals are, what our strategies are. Because they should feed down into the different operational units and what their targets are for performance. You go, okay, the Polytech's goal is to have, 400 students on the West Coast. That means each department has to have 50 students or whatever. That means your program has to have 10 students.
I think we covered. Didn't we cover that in the
Yes.
organisation management paper?
Exactly. When we looked at organisation and management, how our strategic goals filter down to our tactical goals and filter down to our operational goals, and that basically filters down into the individual employee goals. Okay, and what we include in the individual employee job description and their performance plans and what we expect from them to achieve. Now we can use all sorts of different language around that. It could be key performance indicators or targets or achievement standards or whatever.
Certainly not about KPIs. We don't have those down at Westland.
Westland, yeah, they've got KPIs at Westland. And what was an example of some KPI you might have had?
I remember one KPI that I had was they were working on just a network alerting system that would basically email us alerts when, say, one of the drives was full or one of the switches had gone down or something. Basically, I was responsible for setting that up, so that was one of my main KPIs for the year.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I got that.
Yeah, good, okay. And, some KPIs are really easy to achieve, like to set targets, quantitative targets for, You have to sell 10 houses a year or, we can set something quantitative like that. Some jobs are a little bit more difficult to come up with a quantitative value for what they're doing, but there's still goals that you can set for an individual that should link back up to the organisation's goals. So that's what we're essentially trying to do with performance management as a whole, is manage performance to achieve goals. And performance management incorporates the performance appraisal and review process, essentially. Okay, so I guess it's just useful to sort of break that down a little bit. But why is it so important? Why do we need to manage performance? Well, we want to achieve those organisations' objectives, obviously, but we also want people to know what's expected of them. Okay.
If they don't have any goal, if they don't have any goal to aim for, then
what's the motivation to carry on and achieve or meet certain targets? So giving an expected standard, it lets people know when they've reached that standard. And there is quite a bit of research out there around the connections between that and job satisfaction, engagement, motivation, and ultimately retention. There's also quite a lot of research to the contrary that says that performance review processes can lead to disengagement, dissatisfaction, lack of motivation.
It's like I remember one of the chaps was talking about some people say performance appraisals having negative notions about, if you don't perform this standard, you'll get your pay doctor, you'll get
absolutely. Performance appraisal processes have quite a negative reputation, and it can be demoralising if they're not implemented appropriately. They can affect morale if they're inconsistent or they're not linked clearly to the organisation's objectives, or they're not
having some sort of incentive to actually achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Like key performance and global KPIs down at Western, basically however much of our KPIs we achieve, we got certain bonus at the end of the year.
Whether or not we link pay to performance is a really crucial issue to discuss. It comes up time and again. Because if we're going to measure performance, then how do we reward good performance if it's not monetary? It doesn't have to be monetary. But if we're going to link money to performance, then we have to have really good tools in place to measure performance. Because what if I go, hang on a second, Zane and I have been doing the same work all year, he gets all of the recognition, he gets the good performance review, he gets the bonus, whereas I don't, simply because my manager took a dislike to me on day one because something happened. I spilled my coffee on him and he's never liked me ever since.
So it just comes down to having the same same general standards for everyone.
Pretty much what I was talking about just before was improvement in selection, and the perceptual biases that come in when you're selecting somebody for the job also come in when you're doing a performance review process for somebody. You can make the same errors, they're just like me, they're obviously doing well. Or, I haven't liked this guy from the get-go, I don't know why he's still here, I'll just rate him poorly. Or you can do, there's things called harshness and leniency. So harshness is where you rate, like if you've got a rating scale from 1 to 5, which often you do for some, these performance review processes, you might have a kind of rating scale. Harshness is where you rate low consistently, and you might do that for everybody. And leniency is where you just go, I'll just give them a 5, 5, 5, because I really don't want to have to make a decision, and then,
I mean, that harshness thing, to some sort of extent, I think it was when I was back at primary school, basically, we had a day of volunteer work, and it was somewhere in New Zealand, someone came out, and I basically did a day of office work at CCS office. And then at the end of that, the manager had to do a review, a rating for how well we did. And I think I got a 9 out of 10, and the reason why was that nobody's perfect. So words to that effect.
Which is so unfair. Like, why? Yeah, you can't just do that. Like, it'll give you a justifiable reason as to why you deducted one.
It was that long ago. I can't remember the exact word it was said, but that was the gist of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. So this is why, yes, it's necessary, and if it's done well, and there's a good structure in place within the organisation for doing it well and doing it consistently, across different departments and different line managers, then it can actually build this satisfaction and engagement. The point is, if we don't manage performance, if we don't have performance review practices in place, then what's going to happen?
Well, if they don't have performance management, then how are they going to know what?
Exactly. We lose oversight, we lose control, we lose accountability. You know? So for the organisation, if we've got high employee engagement, low turnover, this should ultimately assist us to achieve productivity and organisational goals. Okay, so doing this well, it means that there's a good outcome for the organisation. Yes, there's an investment involved, like it actually takes time, and so that costs the organisation, but the cost of not doing it could be more significant, because what happens is you let people who aren't performing carry on not performing, and that's costing the organisation more. Yeah. So the performance management cycle is really about managing performance and monitoring performance. So it's, knowing what it is we want to achieve and how we're intending to achieve it, planning the process, so setting in place goals and targets and expectations, and then doing the performance review, like the reviewing performance and measuring performance. And that might involve using an interview with the manager, or it might involve collecting feedback from customers or clients or other stakeholders, or it might involve observing somebody doing the work to see what they actually do. So there's lots of methods we can use in that review process, and then we use that information from the review for not just rewards, so we can use it for rewards like financial rewards or other things that we can do, like employee of the month or whatever. And developing, we can use it for development purposes as well. Because in our performance review process, we will typically identify why somebody hasn't met a particular target or a particular standard. And that's an opportunity to say, well, there's potential for training and development that we can do to enhance performance in that area. Unless you are 10 out of 10 on everything, in which case you go, what's next, Yeah.
So as I said before, nobody's perfect.
But if you go for developer, I suppose if you've got somebody who's doing so well on all of their performance measures, the next step is to go, well, what's your next step up the career ladder there? Because you're going to get bored in this role, so how can we develop you into a higher level position?
So that comes into one of the other things, but succession planning.
Comes into
so you know
succession
really who needs the training to
Yeah,
build a future hiring.
So that's the cycle. There is a bit of a formula for performance, and I just have to make sure I remember precisely what that one is. That's
I remember.
You remember seeing that? Performance equals what? Ability times motivation times opportunity times direction, I would think. I just check that last one.
What was the you say?
Opportunity.
Opportunity and direction.
Is that right? Don't quote me on it just yet. Yes, performance, ability, motivation, opportunity, direction. I've seen different variations of this. The one I've normally seen doesn't have the D on the end, but performance is a result of a number of factors. We can be the most capable person in the room, but if we're not motivated and we're not given the opportunity or the correct direction about what we should be doing, we're not going to perform. We can be the most motivated person in the room, but if we don't have the ability, we're still never going to get there. Yeah, so performance is the result of how we feel about our work in the organisation, so the motivation, our ability to do the job, so having the right knowledge, skill and training, as well as the opportunity to showcase our skills.
What page in the book are we on?
It's not actually in the book. That's in the it's in Moodle online, in the book online. So it might be somewhere in the book around. It may not be. If there's a section on motivation, I don't know.
So you said Teresa, the bosses just text and they want me to work tomorrow.
Are you still at the Z? Or?
Yeah, I was sort of been doing sort of a couple of weeks sick cover and so having to do some change to the roster and stuff. Was there a change in the opening hours of the school?
Yeah, no, it's not specifically in the book, but it is on Moodle. So, yeah, and having the direction, you know, we need somebody in leadership who's giving the correct sort of advice as to what the targets are and what they're hoping you to achieve, and also empowering you to achieve that, essentially.
So I'm just bringing that up.
That's right, I must have done it a little bit on that. Yes, so, where were we? So, yeah, we've got to factor in all of those different aspects of performance. Questions? You've obviously read the textbook already?
Yeah.
Read those chapters, that's good. Now, I noticed that you guys are actually have been posting your responses, so that's been really cool. I hadn't been receiving notifications, which was weird, but I've hopefully fixed that now. But I just was going to look in there under your course forum. The only issue is I wonder if we could just get it so that you guys respond to the, rather than adding a new post, because that's what you guys have been doing, is adding a new post each time, is when you go in there, is if you can hit reply down the bottom there, then it will actually link to that, so I can see how many people have responded to that particular one.
Yeah.
If that helps. Right, it would help me if you don't mind doing that, that'd be cool. I'll still be able to get your other ones, and I'll print them out and I'll do some marking on them shortly. Yeah, just in terms of the future ones, if you can just hit reply, that would be awesome. Okay, where were we? So, yeah. Can you, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to a situation where you have been really motivated, you've got the ability, but you haven't been given the opportunity or the direction to perform.
I can certainly think of a couple of times, not necessarily with work and stuff, but
Yeah,
other
situations.
situations I've been in where I've sort of felt I've had the ability and motivation to do something that just nobody's giving me a second thought.
Nobody's giving you the chance. Yeah, that's frustrating. Yeah. So, so there's a whole lot of potential performance there that isn't being utilised. So that's the goal for the organisation, is to try and get all of those factors working in together. And a line manager has a really tough job. They have to make sure that staff have the skills they need and the abilities, but they also have to try and motivate them and give them the opportunities to perform. So make sure they've got the resources and the time that they need, and then direct them, so make sure they know what the targets are and what the expectations are. So a good line manager will be quite aware of that. So when it comes to that third part here, this review part of performance management, I talked about rating scales as one of the tools that we often do use for measuring performance. These have become quite sophisticated. There's an example, this one, the one in the textbook is quite simple. It's quite a simplistic one. We're rating this person from poor to excellent on these 6 characteristics: work output, work quality, dependability, job knowledge, initiative, and overall rating. And then we've got a space for comments. Can you see any potential problems with that one?
Not really a lot of, well, for the table itself, not really a lot of room.
Oh yeah, not much space, yeah.
That's just it's a bit difficult to sort of rate, sort of measure something just
That
from one
description.
side work out, but like that's just too general.
Yeah. So that's quite without further explanation about what you're expecting from work output or work quality or dependability, without some kind of categorization, just a poor to excellent is quite a subjective approach. And like I said, it's going to be dependent on who's doing the ratings. So there might be some managers who are consistently harsh and some managers who are consistently lenient, and that can result in situations of inequity in the organisation. And do you remember when we talked about motivation and the problem of equity theory?
I don't know.
Yeah. If the situation is perceived to be inequitable, it can lead to a loss of motivation. And it only has to be perceived as unequitable. It doesn't even actually have to be inequitable. So it just has to be that somebody thinks it's not fair. So a scale like that can be a bit of a challenge, and it may not give us quite the depth of information that somebody would need to make a more objective rating. And so that's why these other types of scales have been developed. So we've got behaviourally anchored rating scales called BARS, and behaviour observation scales called BOS. And I've given you a couple of examples because there aren't really any in your textbook there. I don't even know if they mention them, but this is where we actually link behaviour, ratings of performance linked to observations or specific criteria that we've developed as being important for performance. So a behaviour observation scale is where we observe the behaviours being conducted, and it would often be always does this through to never does it. Okay, that's quite straightforward for tasks where you are doing quite practical, physical, manual type activities. If you're simply watching somebody working on their computer and you don't know exactly what they're doing, then that isn't necessarily easy to rate. The task of, HR is to set up the policies and practices to make performance management effective in the organisation. So they'll be putting in place the sort of tools that are expected to be used. And designing these tools can be quite challenging, definitely. So I've given you a few examples of the bars and the bars. There's some, on page 2, there's some examples of where they've done positive workplace behaviours, so they call them positive workplace behaviours, and then the one down the bottom is counterproductive workplace behaviours. So there's two sort of categories there that you might rate somebody on in terms of, it's on page 2, yeah. You might rate somebody on that scale, never to always. And that gives you a bit of an indication of their contributions to the organisation on those sort of criteria. Behaviourally anchored rating scales, in contrast to the observation ones, give you a bit more information. They're kind of like our marking schedules for when we're marking your assignments. We have a sample answer or an exemplar or what it is that we're expecting to see as the answer, right? And then, we accept sort of range of answers that align around that particular area. This is the same with the behaviour anchored rating scale. It gives exemplars at each step of the scale around the sorts of behaviours you might be seeing at that level. So for example here, where the performance criteria required is organisational skills, and this is about teaching design, designing the course to optimise interests and so forth. To get a 10, you have to follow a course syllabus, present lectures in a logical order, tie each lecture into the previous one. Okay. To get a 1, you make no use of the course syllabus, lecture on random topics with no logical order. Okay. So that's very, the rating is anchored to a descriptor, basically. Okay. There's one example there on page 3, and there's 2 more examples there on page 4. Like similarly, when you're doing the job interview, when you're interviewing somebody, the questions you ask should have sort of sample answers that you're going to score them on, If you're going to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5, it's just not just poor to excellent. It's here's the kind of answer we would expect to see for a 5, and here's the kind of answer we would expect to see for a 1. So it gives the person doing the rating more information on which to make that decision. So it's going to be more objective and therefore theoretically more reliable. Does that make sense? So performance management, when you're designing your performance review, it's about working out what type of scales are going to work in your organisation and how you can apply those consistently across different types of jobs and things. You might also look at, I don't know if you've heard of management by objectives. You should have by now.
Yeah, sure.
Sure you have. Results-based stuff, basically. We don't care how you get to the outcome so long as you achieve these specific targets and you can provide evidence of that. Yeah? That's sort of the management by objective approach here. If you've achieved the objective, then that's fine. There's multiple pathways for getting there.
Does that come sort of sounds like what KPIs are?
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah. I'm not going to tell you necessarily how you have to do it, as long as you're not breaking any laws. But yeah, the outcome is the important thing. So the KPI, approach. You can also use critical incidents. So critical incidents are when you study or analyse scenarios that arose that were particularly good or where particularly bad things might have happened. these are used commonly in like the DHBs and things where, if there's a serious adverse event, they always do an investigation and they study what happened for a serious adverse event. They said, if somebody dies or whatever unexpectedly. So a critical incident can give you a lot of information. Is that my computer saying the battery's on? Critical incident can give you a lot of information about what went well, what didn't go so well, why did this situation happen, what can we do differently next time. So say, say for example, you're working at a restaurant and a particular customer is extremely unhappy and has a conflict situation, starts swearing and cursing and throws all his plates on the floor and storms out. That's a scenario where you could have a discussion with the employee involved and go, okay, well, let's unpack this and discover what was the lead up to it, what happened. Let's understand, get some information out of why that happened. Okay? So it can be a big critical incident or small. It can be a really positive outcome or it can be a negative one as well. Okay.
I think they sort of had that to some extent as even with the customer reviews, or if an especially good review comes through, the store gets sent an email saying that this staff member has done well, and it basically shows what the customer said about them.
Good. Yeah. Okay. But did they unpack why? What did that employee do particularly?
That's sort of what the customer comments are, saying that what the customer's done well. Like, I had that once where I helped a lady out on the forecourt, and like she had trouble sort of filling out this survey online, so she just sent an email directly to the boss up in Nelson, and she was basically raving about me, saying how
that's good. These are in the textbook, by the way. These are on page 207 if you want to talk to see that. So critical incidents, essays and narratives, so having a conversation with the employee or getting them to write a report about their own performance, a lot of organisations use a kind of, and you can incorporate that into 360-degree feedback, use a self-report kind of approach. Often employees are their own worst critics. They know where their strengths are, they know where their weaknesses are, especially if it's not linked to pay in any way. It's quite easy to say, yeah, I need to improve on this, or this is my weakness. It does require a bit of self-awareness, and not everybody has that. And as the manager, what you're doing is using that as one source of information. You're not going to use it as only source of information, because as the manager, you might have a different perspective as well. So the essays, narratives, checklists. So you might go through and do a tick box sort of approach, or an observation. Observe them doing the job and actually record down what's actually happening in terms of what they're doing compares with what the expectations are. You can use assessment centres. So assessment centres I was just talking about in recruitment and selection. You can use assessment centres as a selection tool. It's where you get a whole group of people together, give them a variety of activities to do, and then sort of assess them on those particular things performance attributes that you're looking at. Okay. So for selection, you might use that information to make a selection decision. For performance, you might use that information to rate performance overall. Like if you were looking at measuring a competency such as conflict management, you can get people into a group, give them a role play scenario and see what kind of outcome happens and observe, and put them through a whole range of different tests measuring those sorts of things. So assessment centres are another possible source of information there as well. Give it a plug in. But those are typically used for larger organisations where you're measuring a large number of people at the same time. 360-degree feedback, have you heard of that?
Not before, but I've seen it in the book.
In the book? Yeah. The traditional feedback is the supervisor gives the employee feedback. In 360-degree feedback, we're basically trying to get feedback from as many sources as possible. So that can mean that the employee also feeds back to about their supervisor. Yeah. If I wanted to measure the performance of a line manager, one of the things we're trying to measure is his effectiveness as a line manager. So why not? What better source of information than to ask the people he's managing, or she? So we can ask those people who are. What could be a problem with that?
I suppose different people would have a different standard, or different people, like so some people may be harsh, some people may be lenient, so it's sort of hard to, I suppose you sort of have to sort of average things out.
Yeah, well that's why the more sources of information you have, the better really, because if you just relied on information from people who are reporting to a line manager, they might, for whatever reason, have quite a negative attitude towards that person, or an overly positive one. The other thing is they might know that, okay, if we rate him poorly, he'll know that he's been rated poorly, and then he'll retaliate in some way. So we'd better rate him high. There's too much depends on it, otherwise our jobs might depend on it. So you've got to look at, again, people's propensity towards being honest in that such scenario. Can you get valid information? Yes and no. It's quite subjective, and it might be quite political, but the more sources you have, the better. If you've got 5 direct reports saying the same thing about one manager, he's hopelessly disorganised and he never responds to my emails, then you potentially picked up a real performance issue. Whereas, and you're that manager's boss, and you're like, yeah, no, he never responds to my emails either. So you're validating that information. And the customers say, he's great, but he never responds to my emails. Then you've got another source of feedback.
I think it's good that you're about not responding to emails.
Hey?
He needs to respond to emails.
He needs to respond to emails, exactly. Yeah, that's right. But if it's just one person out of all of that group, then we have to limit the sort of weight that we place on that, obviously. We can't say that that's the only useful feedback. So here, like for example here, as a tutor, you can get feedback from students. You can get feedback from peers, that we have peer observations. We have feedback from our supervisors. We're also asked to do a self-report on our own performance. So, you're getting 4 different sources of information. And by the time you collate all of that, you start to build a more objective picture of performance, I guess. So it's all about increasing the validity of that information. Any questions?
No.
So the sources of information are going to vary depending on the kind of work that's being done, and who that person's having contact with within the organisation and external to the organisation. So there is quite a lot more to cover with performance management. So next week we're going to carry on looking at this topic in terms of giving feedback and how we improve performance and linking it to rewards and things. So you've still got chapter 16 of that textbook to read, and there is a new course 4 in place which I just posted today that you can reply to. and then chapter 17 of the textbook, and just read that and make notes about the advantages and disadvantages of those different methods that we've talked about, I guess. That is your task, should you choose to attempt. Any questions?
No. That's both this.
That is, indeed, yes. Well done.
I'll definitely have this in by Wednesday next week, so it gives me a chance to
Thanks, yeah.
go over it proofreading. Yeah. I don't think I've got any skeletons. Oh, I don't have any skeletons, so it's
You make sure you look at the marking schedule and see
Oh,
what
yeah,
the marking
I'll
schedule
pay.
says.
yeah, so that
Yep.
transfer.